Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you are all doing well in the land of winter pop culture. I guess in your case, Tony, it's not winter; it's summer where you are.
I never have winter where I
Well, no,
but yeah.
So we are discussing adventure gaming tonight, specifically the announcement a few days ago of Bethesda's or Machine Games. I guess I think Machine Games is like a division of Bethesda. I don't know. I can't keep it all straight.
Yeah.
But they have announced the Indiana Jones game that they're finally coming out with. Indiana Jones games, everybody, for those of you who haven't watched either Tony or my's multiple videos about the Indiana Jones franchise, they're like Halley's Comet. They come once a decade and a half. You don't get Indiana Jones games very often. And more often than not, anything that is being planned gets canceled. The old definition of the word canceled, not the modern version, meaning it literally just never happens. So Tony and I decided that we were going to talk about this announcement tonight. And Tony said, great, I'll be sure to wear my shirt and my hat. And I was like, cool. Yeah. And then I was like, well, rather than clone Tony, I will just put on the same color scheme as Lara Croft and we'll do it that way. So I'm wearing my blue shirt and I got my glasses and I got my ready to go. So let's talk about this this game, Tony. And the other thing that's appropriate about this is that the true champion of Indiana Jones video gaming is Lara Croft. And Indiana Jones has been playing catch up there for decades, whereas Miss Croft could never get a movie off the ground. So it all evens out, you know, at the end of the day. It's her movies stink, his video games are like hit and miss. And now, no, Jason, I'm not wearing hot pants. As a matter of fact, I am wearing I'm wearing the same color, but I'm wearing full khaki trousers. So
okay.
I can prove it. See, look, trousers. There we go. All right. This game gets announced on the heels of a very disappointing movie.
Mm.
How were you? Are you like? Do you keep up with video games, or are you just more like, I'll play something that interests me, and that's really about it? Like, what's your gaming life like these days?
I'm not really a gamer, and I've only had sporadic periods in my life when I have played games. Probably the last game I really got into was when they kind of when they rebooted Lara Croft, which is the one I'm thinking of, you know, with the ice axes, and I really enjoyed that game. But interestingly, one of the first games I ever played in my first couple of years in high school, my family bought an Amiga 500, and I actually played Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And I don't know if I'm misremembering, but that was a very difficult game. Like the first part of it, you've got to run across the top of the train as young Indiana Jones, and I found that very challenging. So I really would not call myself a gamer. My son is the gamer in this house, but I was still very intrigued by this because it's one of my favorite childhood characters. It's Indiana Jones. You know, but before I even knew we were contemplating doing a live stream about this, as soon as I heard the buzz on the internet, I've got to go and watch this trailer. And then I watched, there was another much extended video that was put up by Machine Games where they kind of interviewed all of the creators behind it. So, yeah.
Okay. Everybody, can you hear me okay? Melinda's saying that she had to turn everything down yesterday for Dreamland. So I just want to make sure. I'm pretty loud, so I think you guys should be fine, but just let me know. Yeah, I'm the same way. I probably play a little bit more in terms of like more frequently than you, but I only really ever play games when something is announced that actually resonates with me, and I'm like, okay, I don't have to play everything. I'm not interested in just playing anything. So, for example, for Christmas, Melinda bought me the new RoboCop game, which happens to be a first-person shooter, which we're going to be talking about that format a little later. As much as I was excited to get that game. It's still in the shrink wrap, and I haven't even started playing it yet. I'll get around to it. I wanted it, but even the games that I want to play, which are few and far between, I'm not gunning to go play them immediately sometimes. However, when it comes to adventure gaming, and specifically Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones, and a series called Broken Sword, which is a adventure game series with a character named George Stobart, which was very much based on the whole Indiana Jones historical adventure milieu. That's been going since point and click adventures in the 90s. Those are three where when I hear there's a new installment, my ears kind of perk up a little bit. However, in this particular case, there were two things that immediately threw me off about this game before we even saw any gameplay. One was, and before we even knew a title, one was, well, it's going to be an Xbox exclusive with a PC port to Steam. Like, okay, well, I started my serious gaming back in the day as a PC gamer, Tomb Raider and all those games, and X-Wing and all that kind of stuff. So I know my way around a PC. But because I'm no longer a serious gamer all the time, and I only get a game every now and then, I'm very happy to just throw it on the PS5 and go with it. But I don't want to get into a console war, and I don't want to buy a console just to buy one game.
Yeah.
Fun fact, when I was writing for the Raider.net, way back in the late 90s into the 2000s, the webmaster of the Raider.net, for those of you that don't know, that is still a very notable Indiana Jones fan website. It's a fan-run news website for Indiana Jones. They had announced that there was a new game called Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. I had written all of the reviews on that website for all of the Indiana Jones video games throughout the history of the franchise, all these sort of retrospectives on each game. They're still there to this day. You can go read them. I wrote them. And so the webmaster reached out to me and said, hey, they've got a new game. Lucasfilm is willing to send us a review copy. Will I be allowed, excuse me, can I send it to you? And can you play it and do the write-up for the webpage? And I said, sure, no problem. So it got sent to me with Lucasfilm letterhead wrapped around it and all kinds of stuff. And there was,
oh, wow,
whatever. Yeah, I've still got it somewhere. And it was the Xbox disc. There wasn't, to my knowledge at that time, I don't believe, I think it was an Xbox exclusive. I can't remember. There was a PC version eventually, but Xbox was like the dominant platform it was on. And I didn't have an Xbox. So I ended up buying an Xbox to play this game for that website. And now history repeats itself, where I either have to buy an Xbox or probably get a new graphics card to eventually play this game. So I don't know. It's like poetry. It rhymes. It just repeats itself. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what Indiana Jones history is with. I'm sure it has something to do with all the video game companies merging and acquiring one another and stuff. And now the company that has Indiana Jones is under Microsoft's umbrella. But I can't seem to get away from the Xbox connection with Indiana Jones games. Whatever. The other thing that I noticed about the game, besides the fact that it was coming out for Xbox, which was whatever, was the fact that it was coming out on the heels of a not great film.
Yes.
And that was all we knew at first. We knew it was coming out after Dial of Destiny, and we knew that it was an Xbox exclusive. And I was like, ooh, strike one, strike two. Like, oh man. And again, everybody who's listening, we obviously haven't played this game. We don't have the game yet. Oh, by the way, Bradshaw Studio, thank you so much for the super sticker. I didn't mean to miss it. Let me just pull that up here real quick. Thank you for the super sticker. Very much appreciated. And Elwood Jacobs, thank you so much for the kind super chat. He says, when Indy had his spiel about all the spiritual landmarks forming a perfect circle in the trailer, I audibly snickered. And that's coming from someone who actually likes Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah. We're going to get into the details about this here in a minute. Yeah. So then Crystal Skull. How sad that I wish it had been Crystal Skull that came out. So then Dial of Destiny comes out. We've all seen it. Your mileage may vary. Mine inspired a 4-hour deconstruction of the movie. Not a positive one. And then after that, I guess Lucasfilm said now, in order to probably not dilute brand synergy, now we're far enough out from Dial of Destiny that you may release your information about your Xbox/PC exclusive Indiana Jones game. And the first details start to come out. And Tony, when you first read that press release and maybe even saw the trailer showing the gameplay, what was your first take on that? Now that we had some concrete info on this.
So there was two things that really struck me, and I know there's already been a lot of conversation on YouTube, on social media, about the amount that I don't think people are expecting a first-person game. It doesn't really bother me too much. Like watching the trailer, there seems to be quite the mix of first and third person.
Right.
So I don't. It didn't hit me and go, oh, I'm really disappointed. It's first person. You obviously want, with such an iconic character, you want to be able to see the character in the gameplay.
Right.
And until the game actually comes out, we're not really going to know. The other thing that particularly struck me, more so than, first person, third person debate, I thought it was such a lazy title. I immediately had a lack of confidence in the writing of this story.
Yeah.
Like if you're coming out with, when you think back to the first film, was not Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost, it was Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Right.
with the intent that the subsequent films were supposed to be Raiders of the Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Last Crusade.
Right.
So, Raiders of the Great Circle?
I wish it had been called Tracers of the Great Circle. Like,
Yeah.
But back when the sequel trilogy came out, there was this hope, because everybody was making fun of those films at that point anyway. When we got past the first two of them, when we endured the first two, a friend of mine made this joke. He said, I really hope that the last movie is titled From a Nap, because then it would be The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi from a Nap. And I was like, so like with this, I'm kind of hoping that this becomes a trilogy where it's like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Indiana Jones and the Mediocre Oblong, Indiana Jones and the Terrible Triangle, just like all of them, just like in a row. It's a really lame title. It's really lame.
It's like Ed Sheeran. Is it Ed Sheeran's albums, like plus minus?
I don't even know how that guy manages to make music. His eyes are literally like in two directions. But, yeah, I did think it was a really weak layup title. There was no excitement to that title at all. Like, remember when they announced the title of Indy 4, and they were like, it's called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And we were like, wow, that's a mouthful. Like, that really sounds, holy crap. But nobody said it sounded like a low effort title. Like, everybody was like, man, they really overthought that one. Holy crap. I've even learned that the scuttle after that movie's title was revealed, we all thought, why didn't they just call it Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull? And apparently the holdout for that, I learned, was George Lucas. George Lucas said, no, you have to include kingdom in the title because it's all about this kingdom that was formed by these aliens. And everybody was like, okay, George, fine. We'll cram that in there somewhere. And so it becomes the longest title since the revised Raiders title, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like, But this title, it really does feel like a corporate creativity decision, where it's like they didn't call it, Indiana Jones and the the cosmic whatever, because it's all about these geographic positions of these things. Sorry for my dry throat tonight, everybody. It's just, hey, let's just call it a circle. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that Robot Chicken sketch where the Emperor just draws a circle on a page, or maybe it's the Family Guy spoof of Star Wars where Stewie draws a circle on a page for the Death Star idea, and he's like, hey, hear me out, and he just draws a circle, and he's like, and I get the plot, which is a very Indiana Jones type plot. Like it's like Indiana Jones meets a little bit of Da Vinci Code in a way, where there's all these different things, and they've all been rumored, and there's a legend that all of them relate, and they will all pinpoint the location of whatever this is, and that's cool. That can be a very Indiana Jones plot. Here's an image of him talking about the circle. So I don't have a problem with the plot as far as the effort of it, but you're right. The title is kind of lame. The title is like,
it sort of feels to me as though they wanted a globe-trotting adventure, because that's what Indiana Jones is. It's almost as though it's like, right, how do we give him a reason to go to so many different places? And we're like, oh, let's just draw a circle around the world.
Right.
And I'm sure there are some Indiana Jones fanatics out there who've already got, a globe on the desk in their study, and they've gone, right, is it the temples of Sukhothai in Thailand, and all these different locations shown in the trailer. I doubt that it actually makes a circle around the globe.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
it would be fascinating if they did.
Who's that? There was that meme that went around a few years ago where somebody drew the Earth, and then they drew the Easter Island heads on one side, and then on the other side of the Earth, pointing towards the bottom, were Stonehenge. So it looked like his toes. And then they drew this big body of a big golem going through the Earth, like, and his Stonehenge is his toes, and his head's over here. It is one of those kind of plots, and that's fine. In some ways, it's likely that they're inspired by some of the stuff that Graham Hancock has been talking about for years, where there's different, archaeological sites around the world, and I'm sure they're going to fudge it for this great circle idea, whatever it is, that's fine. It just feels like a kind of a wah-wah title. I think the title could have been stronger. I have no problem whatsoever with whatever the idea for the plot is. I need to see more about it. But we have 2 super chats real quick. Logic Blaster, thank you for the super chat. Michael and Tony, I always enjoy it when you guys collaborate and talk about pop culture. Thank you very much. Thank you. Entertaining. Well, we hope to entertain you tonight, sir. And Knight's Edge, thank you for the $9.99. He says, hey, Michael, my only real problem with the new game is just that it's first person. I feel like a character like Indy should have a game like Uncharted and Lara Croft. Much love from Scotland. And much love to you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah. So the title was a little wah-wah.
And the interesting thing is, when I watched the trailer, you have that opening scene, which I thought the graphics looked amazing. I really liked the voice acting of the villain, Emmerich Voss or whatever he is.
This is a good one, by the way. This is just the equator. All right, keep going. I like that.
In that opening scene in the trailer, the villain actually delivers a much better title than The Great Circle. What if it was Indiana Jones, Dead and Forgotten in the Sands of Africa? Like, that's a great title.
Yeah.
Or even just Indiana Jones and the Sands of Africa.
That's what I was thinking. When you said that, I was like, oh, Indiana Jones and the Sands of Africa. That's cool. But I guess because they're making it this multi-level globe-trotting adventure, they didn't want to which
I don't think it's very hard to come up with really interesting titles for Indiana Jones, be they movies, comics, video games, whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Circle is just lazy.
It really is. It sounds like somebody, like the type of people I used to work with, got to be in the meeting, and they were a little more important in the org chart than all the people who have to actually make the game. And they were like, I had this great idea last night when I was cooking Hamburger Helper. What if we just called it the Great Circle? And everybody's like, yeah, all right, thanks, Brenda. Damn it. And then they have to go off and call it the Great Circle.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, no problem, Matt Movies. Good to see you, sir. Glad you're doing well.
Good to see you, Matt.
There's been a lot of scuttle, not just about the title, but about the format of the game. So to set everybody up for this, the original Indiana Jones games way back in the day were varied. It was, some of them were text adventures on old computers. One of them was, of course, the famous Atari 2600 game, or infamous 2600 game, which was a very ambitious, for its time, almost RPG adventure. It tried to be like a Zelda before Zelda existed kind of game, but the graphics were too primitive and very much ahead of its time. You had the Atari Temple of Doom arcade game, which was a straight up, action high score game where if you could get through the 4 levels like Donkey Kong, it was the mines, the minecart chase, the Temple of Kali, the bridge, and then if you could get through all that, you'd start over and it'd just get harder and harder. And your idea was to save the children, get the high score, stay alive. Great game, by the way. The first real major Indiana Jones game of note, because you had ports on Nintendo. You had the Super Nintendo adventures. You had a few on Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive. But the first real Indiana Jones original adventure of note like this, that wasn't based on a previous movie, was Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which was the sequel to the point-and-click adventure Last Crusade on PC. That was a really great game, but it was a point-and-click adventure game. It was the early 90s when it came out. After that, there was a little bit of a hiatus. Lara Croft shows up, and suddenly LucasArts is like, oh, shit, we got to compete with her. So they come out late in the game around the year 2000, Christmas 99, 2000, with Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, which was a Tomb Raider-like Indiana Jones game, which I played day one. I was playing Tomb Raider 4 and Indiana Jones, the few weeks after Christmas in tandem. I was playing them both.
Yeah.
And it was a good game. It was a little clunky, but Tomb Raider games back then were clunky too because of the way PC hadn't figured out controls and everything yet. But it was still a good game. It was a great Indiana Jones version of Tomb Raider. Then we had the aforementioned Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb a few years later, where suddenly, because the drawback to Fate of Atlantis and the drawback to Infernal Machine, you didn't get that Indiana Jones fisticuffs sense of action. There was no way to incorporate those well into those types of games. Emperor's Tomb figures this out, and now you can effectively beat the crap out of your, bad guys and all that kind of stuff, and you can use your guns and your whips and you jump and do all that stuff. Then there was Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, which came out for PlayStation 2 or 3, I believe. I can't remember which. And that was a game that went through development hell.
That one I'm not even familiar with. I don't think I even heard of that.
It was previewed to come out, and then it didn't, and then it languished, and then when it finally did come out, they put it on a dying console. Like it was, and it was a PlayStation exclusive release, I think. And from what everybody says, it's basically a follow-up, a video game follow-up, not necessarily a story follow-up, but it's a video game style follow-up to Emperor's Tomb. Not bad, not great, not super memorable, obviously. So, but what those two games did, Staff of Kings and Emperor's Tomb, is they did manage to put the two-fistedness into the action, where you were able to really beat the pulp out of your villains like Indiana Jones does in the films. Now we have this Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. and they've decided that the format of choice, and let me just show everybody this, is first person. That's Indy doing something with his whip. I guess he's just lashed the guy, and I guess he's going to pull him in like a lasso or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another image of him wandering into a camp in Cairo around the Sphinx. Very nice graphics, no doubt. He's sneaking.
Yeah.
You're either playing him, or because it's a camera, you're playing his female co-conspirator in the game, Gina, who is a journalist. We'll talk about her in a minute, but they indicated that because Gina was the female co-lead of this adventure, that there would be game time where you would have to play as her. Yeah. Gina is, I got a picture of Gina. She is, there she is. There's Gina. Everybody thought at first, by the way, when they saw the trailer, they thought that she was Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because nobody paid attention to the fact that this is set between Raiders and Crusade.
Yeah.
So people, details are important. It's set between Raiders and Crusade. That's not Helena Shaw. She would still be.
Thank God.
Yeah, Helena Shaw would not even exist yet in this timeline. But she is the intrepid journalist type. However, I don't want to dog on that too much, because the part I want to dog on is the fact that you will be forced to play entire levels in the first person as this journalist character. Every single Indiana Jones video game has made sure that there was, just like the movies, a female co-lead. So Sophia Hapgood was the main character in Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis with Indy. She then carried over into the Infernal Machine, which was set in the late 40s with the Russians. It kind of heralded, and it was about aliens. It heralded a lot about Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. I can't remember who the female character was in Emperor's Tomb, but there was one. I just can't remember who it was. So this is a tradition. So they're keeping this around in the grand tradition of Indiana Jones, which is fine. That I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with, what does it mean for the gameplay? We have a few super chats here real quick. Let me pull these up. Open Maw Productions, thank you for the super chat. He says, new title idea. How about Indiana Jones and the Sketch of Mediocrity? Lots of love. Thank you, sir. Elwood Jacobs, thank you for the super chat. He says, even Indiana Jones and the Eternal Triangle is better than the Great Circle. I agree.
I mean, even the Eternal Circle sounds better than Great Circle.
Agreed.
But like, whatever you think about the games, the title, The Fate of Atlantis, The Infernal Machine, they're better titles than the Great Circle.
Even as on the nose as the Emperor's Tomb is, at least it sounds Indiana Jonesy and not like it's geometry class, you know?
Yeah. I'm editing a G.I. Joe video at the moment, and I've been pulling some cartoon clips, and I was like, how many different episodes of G.I. Joe had really great Indiana Jones titles, like Indiana Jones and the Pyramid of Darkness? Like,
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the time he met Hitler and got his autograph. GPK, thank you for the super chat. He says, snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? I'm waiting to see what the snake situation is in this game for sure. And that's not a metaphor. I do mean literal snakes. They always try and fit those in. Raymond, thank you so much for the kind super chat. He says, hello, Michael and Tony. Great to join you both on this live chat. The hilarious irony to me is that mathematically speaking, that line Indy drew literally cannot be a great circle since the Earth is not a perfect sphere. And with that, nerds will eventually rule the Earth. And thank God I've been nice to them most of my life, except for some randos on the internet, because that means when they take over, they might not throw me in a volcano. All right.
I wonder if all the flat earthers are upset that it's not called Indiana Jones and the Straight Line.
They're probably sitting around going, oh my God, these game designers, they've bought into the conspiracy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dan Hardcastle, thank you for the kind 10 quid, sir. He says the first third-person style was done well years ago in a Riddick game. I think it could work to distinguish Indy from Tomb Raider and Uncharted. The story can't possibly be worse than the last two movies. I agree with that assessment. There is one hangup I have about first person, and it has nothing to do with Tomb Raider or Uncharted. I agree. I totally agree with the perspective of why do we have to just follow the same thing other games in this genre do? I get it. I totally get it. That's not my gripe. My gripe is, well, all right. So I was a big Call of Duty fan. And obviously I played, when I say Call of Duty, I mean the original Call of Duty games, the World War II Call of Duty games. I played those all the time. If you had to rate my favorite games of all time, it would be X-Wing and Tomb Raider vying for number 1 and number 2, depending on what side of the bed I wake up on in the morning. And then right underneath there is Call of Duty 1 and 2. Like, those games were great. And
yes,
I played a lot of first-person games before that. I played, obviously, Doom and Wolfenstein. I played Dark Forces 1 through 3. I played a ton of first-person shooters, a number of which I can't even remember. It goes so far back, and I played so many. I loved GoldenEye, all those great games. But it's called first-person shooter. The reason that the perspective works so well for that type of game is because your enemies have ranged weapons and you have ranged weapons like a flight sim, and you are trying to shoot them Hogan's Alley style while they're trying to shoot you. I don't know, and I shouldn't say I don't know. My experience, and Tony, you tell me if you've had a different experience, whenever I've played a first-person shooter game, you don't want to run out of ammo, and you hope that the enemies you're about to face, if you do, don't have their own ranged weapons. Because if they do, you're a dead person. Because the game is designed for you to throw things at them and for them to throw things at you. It's not a good prospect. Now, okay, so we've got a lot of whip action in this game. If I can get this to come up. It's not coming up. There we go. We got a lot of whip action going on in this game. I've got another photo of the whip here. Where is it? I guess I don't. Here's an image of him pulling the whip off his belt, getting ready to do something, but that's in a cutscene. And look at this right here. This is my worry. On the left, you see a guy with a rifle, and that would only make sense because soldiers carry firearms. This is a first-person shooter. Now, there's a brief shot in the game that shows Indy pulling his revolver because he does have his holster on in the game. He does have his holster. So he has a revolver, but most of what's going on in this preview are all these whip stunts because they're trying to make this whip a really innovative weapon for the game. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad. They tried to do that with Emperor's Tomb and Staff of Kings as well. But in that you could see Indy Tomb Raider style. He was third person, camera backed up a little bit. If my major combat options are punching and a bullwhip, I don't want to be in a first person shooter configuration. I just don't know what, unless they defy reality and all of the firearm toting enemies are really slow on the draw. I mean, I'm concerned. I genuinely am concerned about that. I don't know how that's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's the world's first person whipper. It's
yeah. And Indiana Jones was never Simon Belmont. Like he wasn't Castlevania guy. He wasn't running around just whipping people all the time. Like, he used it occasionally, but like
it was almost more of a tool to him than a weapon.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It was a tool.
It was used for a lot of things. And you see in the trailer, like he actually does some hammer throwing at some point as well.
He does hammer throws and some other things. And I don't have a problem with them amping up some of his boxing, fisticuffs, hand-to-hand combat stuff to make it a little more dynamic. That's fine. Like, you know, he's a rough and tumble guy. You got to make the combat a little bit, as long as he's not throwing Hadoukens or anything like that, then it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But the whip thing, soft weapons like that have always been hard to use in first-person shooter games. It's already hard enough in a first-person shooter configuration to just use a bayonet or a knife. Like, that's already hard enough. So this whip thing, they're making it out to be a lot more than it is. And I keep wondering if it's because, just like in the movie, the recent movie, did Disney have a directive that said minimize Indy's gunplay in favor of his whip and his knuckles? And again, I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't know, but if that was a directive that they gave them, and Disney Lucasfilm, we know, is annoyingly protective about their brands with very bad ideas, the last thing I would have done at Machine Games has been like, they've told us to minimize the player's ability to use ranged weapons. Maybe first-person shooter isn't a great format for this game. Like, it's in the name of the genre. So I'm just kind of like, oh.
I am quite excited about the prospect of in first person mode, you know, if Indy gets an MP40 machine pistol or a Mauser rifle. But if that's going to happen, like, I would have thought you would have put a scene of that in the trailer to get people excited, and you didn't. So when you think, you know, your comments regarding first person whip action, like, how many games can you think of, like medieval type games or fantasy games, where you're using a sword? How many of those are done in first person? Like, it doesn't work.
I mean, even when I played through Skyrim, I would switch the view a lot when it came to certain types of combat, because unless I was shooting a bow and arrow or something, I would switch over to third person or something, because the first person didn't work for that. And going all the way back to when first person shooters were in their second, third generation formats, when they, you know, post Doom, post Dark Forces. I remember getting really excited, and I live to regret this. I remember getting really excited about Core Design's game, or it was IDOS, definitely. I can't remember if Core Design was behind it, but it was IDOS's Thief series, because it was sort of like pseudo medieval steampunk, but it was medieval. And I was like, oh, cool. I get to sneak around in first person. That became a very unfun experience very quickly, because you had a sword, and when you encountered another person with a sword, there was no combat mechanic that allowed for any finesse with the gameplay. It was like, you better hit him and run back, and then run in and hit him again and hope he doesn't hit you. Otherwise you're dead. You know, it's just clunk, 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 and you're dead. Yeah, the first person thing with melee weapons, and especially soft weapons, I don't know. It really is wigging me out a little bit. I don't know what that gameplay is going to be like.
It just in the chat here, who was it? Hypnomix77 says it's first person, yes, but I wouldn't call it a first person shooter. That's kind of what Mike was saying. That's his issue, because it's first person and it's not a shooter. You know, first person works best for that with ranged weapons. So right.
Making sure that I didn't. I think I already read this one. Yes, I read this one.
Yeah.
And I think that's, Venkman. Thank you for the super chat, Venkman. He says, where there's a whip, there's a way. As a reference to Rankin Bass's Return of the King. Well, yes, Matt, he did use it as a weapon in Cairo, and he did use it as a weapon in Temple of Doom, but he used it against people that did not have firearms.
Yeah.
It was to keep back people who had knives and swords.
Swords.
The last time I checked, 20th century German soldiers typically didn't use a sword as a main weapon or a non-firearm weapon. That's my point, is that in the first-person shooter format, if other people have firearms and you don't, it's going to be a very, very unfun experience. Like and again, maybe they've got a way to do it, but I just, yeah. Okay. Now, George,
Oof.
you haven't said anything to make me mad. You've said something to make me wistful, and you've done it with a really
me too. It just had the same effect on me with the Flake 99.
Yeah. I was already trying to lose some weight, but I'm thinking, nah, forget it. Okay. Patton, thank you for the £5. He says, City of Brass is a great example of how steadily paced first-person sword and whip play works. Okay. Well, look, if they've made strides in that, great. But I do feel like that, traditionally speaking, if you haven't been keeping up with bleeding edge FPS, and you've mainly been a Call of Duty guy and stuff, it's a scary prospect to be told, yeah, we're doing it first person, but you don't really have many firearms. Everybody else does, but you don't. It's like, oh, well, where do I sign up? You know, like, so yeah. But again, Slam God, video games don't work like movies do, where movies are edited to make the character look fast enough to do it and really cool. In video games, the AI, the enemies just start pulling triggers. This is my point. It's not a movie where everything's pre-planned. This is a game. Will the mechanics work? How many games have you known and played where you're like, the gameplay, the AI, something is fundamentally broken. This isn't fun to play. We all know these games get out there and they exist. Some of them are notorious. Anyway. Open Maw Productions, thank you for the super chat. He says, what if it plays more like Mirror's Edge with a focus on movement and evasion? I mean, it's not very Indiana Jones. It's more like Thief, but okay.
But they have really hinted at that. As I said, when I watched the trailer, and then it was more like a 10 or 15 minute one where they again showed clips of the trailer, but interviewing a lot of the game designers, and they're talking about how various levels, you have the options of sneaking around, doing that level of the game via stealth, or just going all out, beef fist Foley punching the yeah.
I'm hoping for the best here. Like, I really am. I'm going to end up probably seeing if this game will play on my PC, everyone. So I'm going to try and play it that way. But that's assuming that my PC can run it. My PC's pretty beefy, but it hasn't been, like I bought a head on my processor, and I just maxed out my RAM a few months ago. But still, this could eat up everything. But I'm going to try it if I can. I hold out hope, but it doesn't mean that old instincts don't die hard. If you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I'm really holding out hope that it's just an Xbox exclusive for 6 months, and it eventually comes to PlayStation.
Right.
We bought my son a PlayStation for Christmas, a PS5. So, that's a big investment. We're not going to go out and get an Xbox just to play this one game.
Yeah, not me either. Yeah. I'm not doing it.
If this was on PS5, I would already have it pre-ordered, and I'd have to tell my son, "Sorry, you're not playing PlayStation for a week."
Yeah, I would do the same way. I would already have it pre-ordered if it was on PS5. It's a very dumb move for that. Let's talk a little bit about. You pointed this out when we were talking about doing this stream. There seem to be some fairly interesting character glimpses in this trailer. Most notably, somebody that we're saying, is this Tony Todd? Certainly.
Yeah, so I sent you a screenshot of this in the chat. So I've watched loads of reaction videos, and I've not heard anyone mention this. Like, when I saw it, the first thing that popped into my head, I'm like, that's Tony Todd, Candyman.
Yeah.
He's got the same style of coat. It looks like him. I don't know whether it is, but my God, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to get him. He's certainly got, that voice. He's a great vocal performer. So I'll be interested to see. He's clearly the villain of the one of the villains of the piece. In addition to the Germans, he's some sort of adversary. Maybe he's going to end up being, I don't know, because we don't have a story yet, but it's possible he ends up being like the Magi in the Mummy movies, where he starts out as an adversary and maybe he he finds out he and Indy are on the same side. I don't know. I have no idea. Or he could just be a straight up villain. We have the aforementioned, I already forgot her name. Gina.
Gina.
Yeah.
Gina.
She is Indy's female co-star in this. And for everybody who didn't hear me the first time, this game is set in 1937. It is the year between Raiders and Last Crusade. So that means that Indy has not, reconnected with Marion yet. Indy hasn't had a son yet. Although technically it's possible that he already conceived. Yeah, that's right. Because Mutt was born in 1938. So it's possible that if he and Marion have already parted ways again, that Mutt is somewhere in the mix, so to speak. But yeah, so this is 1937. And I was pleasantly surprised to see somebody doing a nice vocal callback, a good impression of Denham Elliott for this.
I was really happy to see this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Anderson's saying in the chat that Tony Todd has the game listed in his credits on Wikipedia for what it's worth. So that is him. I thought they would have made a bigger deal of that in the.
I would have too.
In the trailer or in the promotion, but apparently that character, what I've read in the behind the scenes stuff, is the character that kicks off the adventure. He actually breaks into Marshall College, and Indy's there kind of, late at night. He gets startled, and it's his confrontation with that character that kicks off the great adventure that is the Great Circle.
Real quick, TJC, I've talked about this a little bit in other videos I've done, but I guess it's technically on topic. This will be real brief. Loved the 2013 game. Liked the Rise of the Tomb Raider sequel, although it was a little bit of a bait and switch. They said that Lara Croft's origin story would be told in the 2013 game, and then she would be the Lara we all know and love in the next game, and she wasn't because they made so much money off the 2013. They decided they wanted to keep milking that format, which was a mistake. But I liked Rise of the Tomb Raider just fine. It was the third game in the series that I thought was beautiful, but super boring. Really boring, really maudlin, not a very good game. Rule of thumb, the better looking a Tomb Raider game is, the worse it is. Every time a Tomb Raider game graphically looks amazing, it's always garbage. Like practically, like it's always the lackluster game in the series. I don't know why that is. The worst looking a Tomb Raider game is, it's going to be a good time. I don't know why. Worst looking as compared to the others in the group. That's what I mean. Okay. So we have Marcus, we have Tony Todd, we have the new female character, companion, Doctor Who character, whatever. Sarah Jane Smith was also a journalist, by the way, everybody. And Liz Sladen said when she was cast as a character who was a journalist, she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, really? That's such a cliche." And yet here we are. We got a journalist. Oh, well. All right. 1937. We're between Raiders and Last Crusade. And I got to relate a little anecdote that happened just a few days ago. No, we're not going back to Michael's wistful childhood or anything like that. We're going back to like Tuesday. Okay. So I posted, we have a super chat here. Elwood, thank you for the kind super chat. He says, unrelated to the topic, but Michael, do you think that there could be a good story in a crossover between Indiana Jones and The Shadow? Dude, I always wondered why Dark Horse Comics never did it in the 90s, because they had both of those characters under license. I have to believe the reason that they didn't is because Lucasfilm probably said no. I know for a fact that Lucasfilm's attitude for a long time toward Tomb Raider was that it was just a Indiana Jones knockoff, which is such a mistake to make. Talk about hubris, because then Tomb Raider dominates an entire entertainment medium, and Indy can never catch up. So in any case, Dan, we're going to get to that. So it's 1937. And as a matter of fact, Dan sort of predicted what I'm about to say in my anecdote. But you didn't step on it because I pulled up your comment. So thank you for having the forethought. All right. So I'm sitting there and I post an image of Indy from the game that was shown in the trailer. I post one of these images here. This one will do for the purposes of this. And I said, is this some sort of like example of game designers just not having a good eye for detail? Or is this something Lucasfilm demanded in a weak attempt to get their 25% difference on the character to pay George Lucas fewer royalties? Or I don't know what. I don't know what to make of it. But I said, this is 1937. It's between Raiders and Crusade. So the bag strap, let me pull this up here. The bag strap in Raiders is under his jacket. Here's another photo of it under his jacket. The bag strap in Crusade is under his jacket. It didn't go over his jacket until Crystal Skull. And that was when Lucasfilm was still owned by George Lucas. Then it really went over his jacket and lower on his body and off the other hip in Dial of Destiny, where the buckle wasn't even flipped. The buckle was now just literally on his back. It was the weirdest, sloppiest looking thing I've ever seen.
It's good. It's good when when you sit down, you lean back, and that buckle's digging into your spine.
Yeah, right. Like just ridiculous. And I said in my post, I was like, why is Disney indexing on this Indiana Jones wearing his bag on the outside of his jacket? And this friend of mine on Facebook was like, well, I just always thought that it was a mistake every time it was under his jacket. I just thought it was a mistake that looked weird. And I went, you think that was a mistake that they made consistently in hundreds of shots over 3 movies over an 8-year period? And he kind of backed up and he was like, oh, laughing, crying emoji. Like, and I'm like, no. Costume designers don't make continuity flubs like that. It's a very deliberate and very carefully notated system behind the camera. That's why continuity errors are rare and they're hilarious when they happen, because people are even making sure there's somebody behind the camera, everybody, taking notes between each take to make sure that if the character's hair gets mussed up in the continuation of the shot, that when they reset, they know where their hair was generally, so they go back and fix it again so they don't have a continuity error on take 2. Yep. So the point is that his bag was deliberately under his jacket for 3 movies. And what I told this person, and I want to tell everybody else here who thinks it's an inconsequential detail, why are you harping on this? It doesn't make sense for his bag to be worn outside the jacket. And I know that a lot of people who think that it's weird that it is under the jacket have clearly never worn the Indiana Jones ensemble, because his jacket is not a winter coat and that bag is not a purse, and you are not walking in the winter on the sidewalk in New York City. All right. This is not something where people think they think in civilian terms, where it's like, I'm going to put my bag outside my coat. Well, here's the thing. Most of the time, unless people have just become total slobs, when you make that decision, you've already zipped up your coat or jacket, and then the bag is sitting outside it. Indy never zips up his coat. His coat is always open. And when he does zip it up, he doesn't want have to fiddle with that bag all the time, with that strap constantly around him. And when he's moving, and let me tell you, as somebody who's worn this for travel my whole life, I have traveled. Every time I travel, I got my jacket in my bag, and I've usually got my hat. That's just the way I am. I'm eccentric. Deal with it. But I've been doing this for like 25 years, okay? When you're moving around like that, that bag, that strap, if it's on the outside, it's going to get caught up in the front panels of the jacket. It's going to curl everything up. You're going to be constantly fighting with it. On the other hand, if it's under the jacket up against your shirt, when you zip your jacket up, it's just locked right there at your waist. The bag is still right there, and you can get at it. Am I making sense, everyone? Anyway,
Look,
I know I seem like a psycho, but
no, I have my own personal anecdote that'll kind of reinforce this. It's not just. It was never just an aesthetic choice by the costume designers when they were designing the look of Indy for Raiders. It was a very practical choice because if he's going to get into combat, you know, he might want his jacket on, he might want his jacket off, but he never ever wants to lose his satchel. Now, going back 20 years, my own kind of military experience, there was several companies out there who started making these grab bags for military personnel, for contractors. You all would have seen them in a lot of, you know, action movies and thrillers and stuff. These over-the-shoulder grab bags that you can have, you know, some spare magazines, some ammo. Whenever me or any of the guys I ever worked with in Iraq, when we would carry those, you would don that and you would put your body armor over the top. Because if you need to escape quickly, you're going to move faster without your body armor. The body armor comes off and you've still got your grab bag. It's your essentials. It's all of your equipment. It's a very practical choice done for a deliberate reason.
Right.
Yeah. And if you kind of, if I saw anyone in Iraq that had body armor and the grab bag over the top, you're like, that's an amateur. He doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Keith, for those of you that don't know, Keith is our resident geek apologist. He apologizes and simps for pretty much every decision in entertainment. And he's saying, Michael, does it really need to be exactly the same way it looked in those films? Why can't he wear a different strap? It's the same strap. It's just on the what? Who wears the exact same thing for decades? Can you not upgrade or refer? For decades? Raiders was in 1936. This is 1937. Last Crusade is 1938. We just explained this. Fanboys are bad at details. Hear me once more. I'm going to do this in like you do for, you know, like a kid where it's like, no. Let me do it again. 1936, Raiders. Great Circle, 1937. Last Crusade, 1938. Do you really think that he's going to go from inside the jacket to outside the jacket to inside the jacket all in a span of 18 months when he's been wearing it that way for years and years?
And it's not what he's wearing, as we just discussed. It's the way he's wearing it for a very practical reason.
Yeah, there's no such thing as an outside strap versus an inside strap. It's not the strap. Anyway, sorry, Tony, continue.
But by this rationale, would you be comfortable if all of a sudden his pistol was on the left and his bullet was on the right?
No, I would not.
I mean, perhaps he is ambidextrous, but
right. It makes no sense. Why now? Jason Anderson has said the strap on top of the jacket restrains the jacket, meaning the jacket won't move as much, making the character model easier to rig. I thought about that, Jason, for a brief moment until I realized they never worried about that in the older, more primitive games where it was even harder to render all this stuff. In other words, they still put his bag on the inside. So in Infernal Machine and in Emperor's Tomb and in Staff of Kings, and not that this one really counts, but Fate of Atlantis, his bag is always under his jacket, right where it's supposed to be. I don't understand this change. It's very strange.
If there are some playable elements in this game, you know, we're yet to find out if there are some playable elements in the game where Indy actually has to remove the satchel to get things out, then I might understand it, but we'll have to wait and see. But outside of that, I don't know why they made the choice.
Yeah, it's weird. Wes, thank you for the super chat. Thank you very much. He says, good evening, gents. The developers of this game are Machine Games, most recently famous for the newer Wolfenstein reboot game, which I played, which has a mix of levels for dedicated stealth paths and heavy gunplay. Okay. Well, that's very encouraging to hear. Very encouraging to hear. Brian Dillingham, thank you for the Dillinghamism. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes, George, exactly. You don't wear it over a jacket. It causes problems with movement. I know I harped on this a lot in my Dial of Destiny review, and I know I just harped a lot about it here, but I do because I've worn this configuration my whole life, and all these people who are like, fair weather Indiana Jones casual viewers who don't know anything about his outfit, they think there's, oh, it's no big deal. No, it really is. Like, let's take this shot, for example. This shot has two weird problems in it, one of which isn't even consistent with the game's other images. All right. So here's Indy in the game.
Yeah.
He's on the outside. Tony, go ahead.
How does he cross draw that whip?
It's so weird, right? And here's the thing: you can't see it in this version of the photo, but if you were to see lower, it got cropped. That whip is not clipping through his leg at a different angle. That whip is actually angled that way at the front of his hip. So the handle is facing us. The butt of the handle is facing us. How would you draw that way? Because traditionally, and Tony and I have joked about this before, traditionally in the Indiana Jones movies, his whip is often seen in random bits of interstitial footage and transition footage with the handle hanging downward on his leg because the loop has probably rolled, right?
Yeah.
Every time he pulls the whip, though, to draw it in an action scene, the magic of editing puts the whip right where it's supposed to be. So here's the whip in Peru. Right before he draws it, you can see that the handle's forward and he's drawing it. Here's the whip in Temple of Doom. Handle is forward, and you can tell it was forward because look where he's pulling the snap off of it. It's right at the top of the handle. So it was ready to go. Here it is in Cairo. It's not hanging downward off his leg. It's ready to pull facing forward. Now, to the game designer's credit, if you look at the other images in the game, you will see, like the one I just showed, where is it? Right here, the bag strap. For the first time in a game or anything, the whip is actually where it needs to be for him to draw it. It's exactly where it needs to be. And then there's another shot right here where he's drawing it, and it's right where it needs to be. So I laughed when I saw this shot because I was like, are they going to fix that before the game comes out? Because that's weird. That's just weird. Oh, well. All right. Now, how many people hate me for pointing all this out? Okay, let's see. Drew Griffin, thank you for the super chat. It says, Michael, I can listen to you discuss Indy's clothes for hours. Cheers from Los Angeles. Thank you, Drew. Very kind. I appreciate that. Let's see. And Ewong 251 says, wearing the bag on the outside means the bag would need to be dynamic and move around with every movement. If it were under the jacket, it's more static. Yeah. That is also true, KBA. I can say that for sure. I've gotten caught in a lot of rainstorms. Okay. All right, here we go. So next little bit I wanted to talk about, Tony, the Harrison Ford vocal performance. We don't want to get copyright struck, so we're not going to play the trailer here, but it's quite decent, I think. What did you think of it?
I was totally okay with it. I've heard a lot of, and there was someone just in the chat before said, like, why didn't they get Harrison Ford? Well, first of all, it's probably going to blow their budget to get Harrison Ford.
Right.
But I actually think, I can't remember this guy's name. I know he's voiced a lot of other video games like Last of Us and that. I actually think he does a better young Indy than what old Harrison Ford does.
Yes.
Like, that was the elements that really took me out of those early scenes of Dial of Destiny was not so much the deep fake effect.
Right.
It was the voice that didn't match.
Yep.
Harrison's Ford's voice, as everyone's does, changes as he's gotten older. And
yep.
Yeah, you don't want that voice now. And again, he's going to want, $3, $4, $5 million to do all the voice acting for this. Then they may as well save their money. Yeah. I could tell very early on that it wasn't Harrison Ford. And then once my brain registered that, it didn't bother me. It really didn't.
Yeah, I liked the voice work a lot. I was very impressed. I watched the trailer like 3 or 4 times just for that voice work. I kept listening to it. I'm like, wow, like you can tell it's not Harrison Ford, but it's not far removed. It's very much a really, really good nuanced performance that sounds it is very much in the Harrison Ford spectrum tightly. Like, it's not so far afield that you're just having to pretend in your mind what you're seeing. Where I get off the boat isn't the voice. I would have thought the voice would have been harder to achieve based on the vocal work in the previous games, which the actors were good actors, but they didn't really sound all that much like Harrison Ford. So I thought that was the hurdle. I would have thought that getting Harrison Ford's face right wouldn't have been the hurdle for all these fancy graphic artists and people now with all this technology. And at first I was like, well, is it a rights issue? And then I'm like, no, because the way they did the cover art for the game, they're clearly painting Harrison Ford. They're not doing Harrison Ford. So I started to look at the trailer again, and I noticed a lot of inconsistency. So, like, this image, it looks okay. It's one of the better images in the game in motion that I've seen in the trailer. This one kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. Like, it's kind of like, and then you've got this signature one that doesn't look anything like him. Like, I mean, it's got some of the elements, but it's now so uncanny valley away from Harrison Ford. It seems like there is a consistency issue with the facial animation. I don't know. I'm wondering what the situation is there. Maybe the motion tracking or something is. I don't know. It's almost like the voice is closer than the face is half the time. So yeah, it's maybe it'll improve by the final version and the cinematics will look great. Maybe we're seeing early footage. I don't know.
Yeah.
Last little bit of fun stuff here. So this is the Smith & Wesson revolver that would have been in Raiders. Not a continuity problem at all. Although it does make me wonder if the game designers, and I doubt this because they put the bag on the outside, so I don't know how continuity focused or Easter eggy they're going to be. I did wonder when I noticed it was the Smith & Wesson, because at first I just assumed it was the Webley, because the other games that have used the pistol, some of them have used the Smith & Wesson. Some of them I think have even called it a Colt at one point. One of them I think you said it was a Webley, but since this game is so franchise tied in, I do wonder, since it's between Raiders and Crusade, it would be fun if the designers were this detail oriented, if they gave us a sequence or a reason why Indy ends up with a Webley in the next film that he then carries through Crystal Skull. Yeah. I mean, he is in North Africa at one point, and the British Empire, the Commonwealth and everything was still very much there. So that's wishful thinking on my part. If they don't get the bag right, then they're probably not thinking about, oh, this would be a fun little Easter egg to put in, but whatever. So do you think, Tony, that this is going to lead, if it does well, do you think Disney will finally be the company that doesn't wait a decade between Indiana Jones games? And the reason I ask is because Indiana Jones is the underserved Lucasfilm franchise of the two that are successful. It gets a third of the books less than that. It probably gets a tenth of the books, the novelizations that Star Wars does. It gets one video game for every 10 Star Wars video games. It's the underdog. But this is Disney.
And toys.
And like toys.
1% of the toys of the other franchise.
Right. They've effectively retired the live action Indiana Jones because they've stuck to their guns that Harrison Ford is the only Indy. So they're going to have to recoup their investment with Indiana Jones somewhere, since Indiana Jones was part of that $4.4 billion buyout package for Lucasfilm. So I can't imagine they're going to actually throw this franchise away, even as they waited basically 8 years to do anything with Indy from the time they bought Lucasfilm. Does this mean that there's a possibility that they might start putting out more frequent Indiana Jones video game and maybe even animated material for the franchise?
if it's good, I certainly hope they do. And it's kind of once they have built a lot of the. I know that this game has been in development for quite some time. I'm sure they're having. I'm sure it's taken them a long time to get the gameplay mechanics right for all of the whip stuff, because that's not really been done, certainly in first person, in any other game. And again, I'm not a gamer. I could be completely wrong. But once they have figured out those mechanics, and hopefully they are fully functional in the game, and they're not, it's not one of the downsides of it, I would like to see more. But there's a lot of things I hope to see in this game. I really want to play a bit of first person shooter with Indy with an MP40. Whether we're actually going to see that or not, I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, I think if they were going to do that, they probably should have shown it in the trailer, because that'd be something that would excite people. You know, that's it's great to see Indy punching Nazis in the face, but the MP40, that would be pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Or even getting to see him use some different weaponry as well. I would really, I hope this game is successful. I really do. And if it comes out, and all the respectable reviewers out there, not the bought and paid for ones, if they're raving about this game, maybe I will go and buy an Xbox.
Right. Right. Yeah. If they're raving, maybe I will see what my computer needs to run it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Venkman, thank you for the super chat. He says Indy's voice is like the Star Trek movies from the 80s and 90s, where Leonard Nimoy didn't sound exactly the same way he did during the 60s. Yeah. And funny about that, he actually sounded more like the original series in the motion picture. And then suddenly his voice took a turn before Wrath of Khan. And then when you play the CD-ROM games from back then, where the full cast did their voices and it was set during the original series, he sounded like movie Spock, even though he was supposed to be young Spock. But again, it was just nice to have them all in the same game. Okay. We have GPK. I've gotten screwed up on my G's because of the Evangelion video. You're going to have to forgive me. Thank you for the super chat. He says, so for the face model of Indiana, it has to look like the voice actor, because if you don't, then it will be super difficult to animate. I remember it being a problem in Spider-Man PS4. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I wonder if that means they put some makeup or something on him that would have helped out with that, because at some point they're going to have to turn him into Harrison Ford for the game, like for the final product. So I wonder how that works. My understanding, I thought that there would be an Xbox physical release. I assumed. I bet you for Steam there won't be a physical release. It'll just be a download off the Steam platform.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah. It's a crapshoot. I unfortunately, because of the way Indiana Jones games have rolled out over the years, I was unable to ever play Staff of Kings because I did not have I didn't have the PlayStation that came out on, and it came out so late and I never bothered to circle back around and try and play it. The portovers of Emperor's Tomb, if you weren't playing it on Xbox and you try to play it, if you try to play it on Steam right now, it's rough. It's hard to play. I couldn't even get Infernal Machine to run real well because they're such older games, PC games, that the modern PCs don't know how to handle them. They're not backwards compatible, and the patches that Steam tries to apply to them. So unless you have older PCs for Infernal Machine or the very rare N64 cartridge, which apparently that's still not even fun to play because the N64 version of Infernal Machine was buggy as hell. So unless you have an old PC for Infernal Machine, unless you have an original Xbox for Emperor's Tomb, unless you have a PS2 for Staff of Kings, you're the only Indiana Jones games right now that are easy to play, strangely enough, are the Fate of Atlantis and Last Crusade ones, because you can play them off the very refined shareware scum VM front end engine that you can. It's freeware. So yeah, it's hard to get super excited about this yet for myriad reasons, because I can't go back and revisit a lot of the old games very easily and kind of get myself amped up.
It's not.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Totally different with Tomb Raider. You know, you can. There's so much you can go back and replay to get yourself. You know, I often do that when the Marvel Cinematic Universe was good. You know, when the next Avengers movie was coming out, I would go and rewatch the previous ones prior to watching the new release in the cinema, that kind of thing. What did you think of the different locations featured in this trailer?
I liked the ambition. I had to laugh a little bit because, again, like when it comes to me talking about the whip stuff, I know it's a video game. Like, I get it. We have to find ways to make it a video game and have exciting action. So I grant it that mulligan. I grant it that this is a heightened reality thing because you are supposed to be playing the game and enjoying yourself. I get that. But when you talk about the locations as part of that, there's a shot in the trailer of him running down one flying airplane's wing, about to leap to a Japanese Zero's flying wing in flight. And again, we have seen Indiana Jones do some crazy things. And I admire their innovation. I admire their moxie to try and find ways to make action sequences in these games feel like a game. I am going to laugh my ass off, though, because escaping a nuclear blast in a fridge, we thought that was the pinnacle of implausibility. But for some reason, running across airplane wings in flight and jumping from one wingtip to another wingtip of another airplane in flight at speed, I don't know. I just feel like that takes Buster Keaton to a level that I didn't imagine. And and again, it's a game. I get it. It's a game. That's a level they've designed in the game. Okay. But I feel like Indiana Jones would have lent itself to a little more Call of Duty World War II meets a little bit of adventure fantasy, but not going all the way over into. It seems like in that instance, it seems like they're trying to compete with Uncharted, where Uncharted did a lot of crazy stuff. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but I don't know if it's a game changer. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly thought the different locations. This game, it looks really good. I love the fact that he's going to Thailand. I've got that country has a very special place in my heart. But there are scenes. He's like up on the rooftops where it looks like he's in Rome, Vatican City, and yes, everything looks great, but. Was it you mentioned earlier, Da Vinci Code? I'm like, he's in Vatican City, really? Yeah. They could have picked something a bit better than that. And there's a Zeppelin. Like,
right.
Do we need that again? Do we need another Zeppelin? Like, that was really good in Last Crusade. Do we need another one?
I haven't, aside from Marcus and the Zeppelin, I haven't yet seen a lot of fan winks. I haven't seen a lot of pandering. That could change, though. We haven't seen that much of the game. But if my PC can run it and it gets good word of mouth, I'll definitely give it a shot, because it's a game. It's not, it's not a movie. So I don't know. I think though what'll end up happening is I'll be playing the game more for seeing how the story unfolds than the gaming experience itself, because the plot of the game so far looks like the strongest element of it, despite the lame title. I feel like they put a lot of thought into the plot. Allegedly, it looks like it appears to be that they put a lot of thought into the plot. However, trailers have gone sideways for me when I saw the final product a lot. So I could be wrong, but I feel like the plot is setting itself up to be pretty respectable. Certainly from what I've seen so far, it's no less, its potential is no less than what I saw from the 3 Survivor Tomb Raider games. It seems like the plot part of it, they've given it some thought. Do I wish that it was third person? Little bit, not because I want it to be like Tomb Raider or Uncharted, but because I don't think Indiana Jones lends itself to first person shooter. Like again, they can prove me wrong. I'm open to it. I want to be wrong. I do wish that they had an option for Fedora Vision, though. I wish that you could hit a button.
What do you mean by that?
I wish that you could hit a button so that at the very top edge of the screen would just be this little curve of brown felt. Because the problem is that the thing about Indiana Jones is you want to see him. Like Indiana Jones is like the headline. It's Indiana Jones and I know that they're saying there's a lot of cut scenes. I know they're saying but you want to see him. Do I want to see him with the bag outside his jacket? No. So this is probably the best of all outcomes. But hide that crap. I don't want to see that. But no, in all honesty, I would feel more comfortable in the gameplay, and it would kind of be fun since his hat is such a big deal in the franchise. If you could just hit like a button on your controller or F1 just to toggle, a little bit more of that first person, not a lot. You don't want to obscure your view, but when you wear your hat, you can see the brim, like it's right there. It's kind of whoop. And I would just like to see just a little hint of it, just a little, because you're not going to get to see it a lot during the game. So,
Now, what if this game ends up being a game where you have to play the Gina character for like more than half of the game? You don't need Gina in third person.
No, you don't. You don't. And again, I've never liked it in any game where you have to play somebody else partway through that's not the headlining character. It has nothing to do, by the way, I want to be clear, has nothing to do with that character being not male. Because when I played Tomb Raider, Angel of Darkness, they wanted you to play certain levels as Curtis Trent. And I was like, I don't want to play Curtis Trent. I bought this game to be Lara Croft. Similarly, when I played Spider-Man on PS4, I didn't want to play the levels where you had to be Mary Jane or Miles Morales. I just wanted to be Peter Parker Spider-Man. In the Miles Morales game, I don't want to be anybody but Miles Morales Spider-Man. I don't want to have to do these diversion missions where suddenly I'm like, yeah, for like 2 levels, you're like, Aunt May or something. And it's like, I don't want to have to do that. I just want to play the character. Like I'm not so ADHD that I need the character to switch up as much as I need the action and the levels to.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that the game is first person shooter in that regard, but these games, not just these games, but gaming in general constantly tries to do that, where it's like, well, don't worry. Like they've even threatened it in the upcoming, still rumored to be in development Tomb Raider game, where last year, or the year before, they were like, they put it on their Twitter feed, the Crystal Dynamics people. They were like, so we're developing the next game. It's going to be really exciting. And Lara is going to be more like sort of a mentor character who leads a team. She leads a team, and everybody, including myself, was like, we do not buy your games for a Scooby Gang. We do not want a Scooby Gang. We do not want multiple characters to play. We buy these games for the headlining character. That's it. So as much as I don't have a problem with Indiana Jones having a companion in the story as he does in the films,
No, it's like Bond girls.
Yes.
It's a trope of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. I am not interested in whole diversionary levels that involve said character without Indiana Jones there. Conversely,
first person shooter shooting pictures with her investigative journalist camera.
Right. I love the games Horizon that are also centered around a female protagonist. They're Tomb Raider like play style games. And Aloy is the main character. They talked about how they were coming out with a side game while they work on Horizon 3. And the side game was going to involve you playing all these different characters. And I'm like, yeah, all right, well, if that floats your boat for somebody, I hope they enjoy it. I won't be buying it. I buy these games to follow the story of Aloy. I don't want to play another character. It's a taste thing, but yeah, I'm worried. I'm not worried about it. I'm rolling my eyes because I've had to play through those levels a lot in other games. Yeah. It's like, oh, here we go. Oh, I'm Mary Jane Watson, and now suddenly I've got to sneak around in this museum, and it'll start me over if anybody spots me. I got to run to these little corners and hide behind coffee carts and stuff. And it's like, this is a waste of time. Can I get back to Spider-Man who's hanging out in the ceiling panels, please? Like, this is, ridiculous. And again, Adam, I agree with you. If the story is good, then I'll be fine with most of it. Because I'm probably not going to be playing it for the gameplay. I'll be playing it for the story first and foremost. So,
I mean, it's clearly starting off well because, as I said, that the Candyman apparently kicks off the story when he breaks into Marshall College and he's there as a professor. So immediately we know that he's not starting in a dingy apartment in New York as a sad, depressed old man.
Right.
So
yes, and it's between Raiders and Last Crusade. Bag strap notwithstanding, it looks so sloppy. So yeah, I really would like to get an answer from Lucasfilm reps or Machine Games on the bag strap, though. That's driving me crazy. That's driving me nuts. I know people are me talking about it, but it's driving me crazy.
As you mentioned earlier, like you appreciated that you haven't seen a lot of fan service in this trailer, outside of Marcus Brody. Potentially for me, if there is going to be fan service in this, I hope I'm wrong, but I think they will go down the road of, perhaps we'll see Sala. That when he's in Africa, there might be a monkey who flashes and those kinds of things. When the kind of fan service that I want to see is, I would have loved to have seen some shots in this trailer where he's wearing his adventure gloves. That to me is the kind of fan service I want. And even a level where he's got his revolver and a Browning high power. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be. I would see, that's the kind of stuff where you have to hope that the people who are licensing the franchise have that eye for detail and that love of the franchise. They clearly do in some respects because they've got Marcus in there. I'm worried about the line exchange between Marcus and him that's in the trailer where he says, Indy, you can't run from your problems. And he's like, watch me. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like Dial of Destiny. Okay, well, but hopefully it's not in context. And when we see the whole conversation, it'll be better.
This is not an adventure.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. You shouldn't run.
Really? That's why I bought the movie ticket.
Yeah. You shouldn't run from your problems. Indeed. He's like, watch me. I'm out of here. See ya. I'm not paying alimony. I'm out.
Yeah.
Ewong makes a good point. He says, I'm also hoping there aren't too many escort missions where you're chained to your sidekick's hip and have to make sure they don't get hurt. Word. I hate those kind of missions.
Yeah.
Horrible. That's another thing. It's like, oh God. The Marshall College break-in sounds like the intro into Frank Darabont's City of the God screenplay. Well, funny you point that out, Thunder Robot. You say Indiana Jones and the Tomb Raider. I joked with Tony a while back in one of our mini conversations. Hi, Tim. I said, I told Tony, I can't remember what conversation it was, how long ago it was. It was pre Dial of Destiny release, I remember. And you and I were talking about the casting and Phoebe Waller-Bridge and how the trailers, she wasn't coming across real well and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what would have been awesome? I said, if they had, because they said that Harrison Ford was one of the people instrumental in getting Phoebe Waller-Bridge by just saying he wanted to work with her or something. I'm like, what a shame that he hadn't said, I want to work with Angelina Jolie. Because even though Angelina Jolie wasn't ever going to play Lara Croft again, it would have been a beautiful thing to have her in the movie and playing a new character. Wouldn't have been Helena Shaw. It would have been a totally different script at that point, which would have been better. But have her and him together in both of their last big adventure films. It's their last big adventure film, and they're in it together, and everybody knows that she played Lara Croft, and so she's getting to share screen time with Indiana Jones in an adventure story. I think that would have been an amazing nod. But again, Lucasfilm's attitude.
It's just like how, they cast Sean Connery as Indy's father because the idea of Indiana Jones, there's that famous story.
Yes.
Spielberg wanted to make a Bond movie. I've got something better.
Yep.
Exactly that same kind of tip of the fedora.
It would have, she wouldn't have said no to that. If they said, we're doing the last Indiana Jones movie, Harrison Ford has requested that you consider being in it alongside him. Obviously you won't be playing Lara Croft, which we know you don't want to do anymore. You'll have a new character, but people would love to see you two on screen in an adventure film at the same time. I can't imagine she would have said no to that. That'd have been really fun.
Yeah, she could have broken out her British accent again, which I think she does quite well. So
100%. And it would have, Sal, hold on 1 second. It would have still checked the box for Kathleen Kennedy's British brunette wish fulfillment.
Yes.
Yep. Sal, thank you for the super chat. He says, Indiana Jones and the blown out O-ring, Tales from the Retirement Home. Also, first person is the wrong option. Yeah, it's oof. I'm worried. I admit I'm worried, but not for the similarities to Tomb Raider and Uncharted. I'm worried for the gameplay. That's my issue.
Yeah.
Let's see. What if Jolie was playing not Lara, like Arnold played not Conan in Red Sonja? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you pull up King Eric's comment? It was just right below.
Uh-huh.
If Harrison ever changed his mind, who would be a good replacement? I've been wondering that when they made this $4 billion deal for Disney to buy Lucasfilm, do you think it was actually written into the contract that, that going forward they could never recast the character? Like, I know Harrison Ford's come out and said it, Kathleen Kennedy said it, Spielberg said it. Do you think it's actually written into the character, or do you think?
I would be hard pressed to believe that, because they're all doing that PR feel good spin. They're all saying the right things to the camera. Yep. Look, we all have these rumors that are unsubstantiated. Nobody's confirmed anything. That George Lucas had it in the contract when they bought Star Wars that they could never release the theatrical prints. But we have no confirmation of that. We have no confirmation that that's the case. We do know, confirmation wise, that Disney, they have confirmed they have all of the pre-special edition footage, all safely archived, all safely stored, all preserved and cataloged. They've made that very clear. So I have a hard time believing that, again, they would buy $4.4 billion company and sacrifice its second most famous franchise outright for the feels. Like, corporations are never going to be that emotional. They say the emotional things on camera because they're doing the good PR marketing. They expect you to do this in the moment, and then 15 minutes later they dirk that guy in the back room, and they get another actor to play him 3 years later, and they neuralize you. You're going to forget everything that just happened over here. Get excited for the new product. It's the weirdest thing.
If Harrison Ford has a has a Mel Gibson type meltdown and all of a sudden he gets cancelled, I guarantee you they'll come out and be like, oh, screw him. He was a bad,
Yeah.
But again, I hope that Harrison Ford lives a very long, happy. I hope he lives to 110 years old.
Yeah.
If Disney, by some sheer miracle, is not bankrupt and gone by then, a week after Harrison Ford passes away, they'll announce a reboot of Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, it might be 20 years away yet.
Right. Because of his constitution.
Yeah.
Jason Anderson says, Indy's adventuring partner, Linda, cropped.
Yeah.
Drew G says the fans are the last people they're concerned for when making these movies. Yeah, having an audience is the last thing they're concerned about when making these movies. They don't even care about having anybody to buy anything anymore. It's amazing.
They keep chasing a new audience. It's like, entertain the already existing one that you paid $4 billion for.
Right.
Because that's really what you're paying for. You get these properties, but it's
right.
You're buying a customer base.
They buy a customer base and then they throw the customer base away and say they want another customer base.
Yeah.
Or the thing they already established the customer base for. Like, Adam, I agree with you philosophically that not every film series needs to go on forever. The irony here in your statement is that you've chosen the serial hero character to end. And again, given the way that the Indiana Jones series unfurled, we all wish it would have just ended with Last Crusade. However, the character and the genre is primed to go on like James Bond. Indiana Jones didn't have to end. The franchise that should have ended was Star Wars, because Star Wars was a closed saga. It was a Lord of the Rings style story. And people think they're like, oh, but it's so epic. There's so many different things you can do in that world and explore. And it's like, never works out that way. When you know exactly what story you're telling as a progressive, I don't mean politically progressive, I mean as the characters progress through the saga and have character arcs and everything like that, you are telling a story where the main characters are meant to change, suffer, and grow. Therefore, you will have an end. Indiana Jones, James Bond, Batman, Lara Croft, these characters are serialized adventure heroes. There is the point of them. They never change. It's the situations around them that are supposed to change every adventure. They have the potential to be perennial, as James Bond has proven. So I'm kind of laughing that Indiana Jones is your pick for the franchise that needs to end, when in truth, his potential was squandered and he never got to spread his wings as a franchise. He was created as an alternative to James Bond. George Lucas said, I got something better than James Bond. You're going to love it. And then they quickly decided, no, we're going to make these films as our every 5 years family vacation. And so they changed their mind and they hobbled the Indiana Jones franchise potential. It is the most untapped franchise in the history of entertainment. Flat out.
Even more, there are a lot of parallels for me between Indiana Jones and the Lone Ranger and Zorro, particularly Zorro.
Right.
Zorro pops, I'd love to see another new interpret. I love the Antonio Banderas. I wish that had been a trilogy rather than just 2 films. But
right. Yeah.
Recast the characters. It's all there.
It is. It really is. No, Randall, Paramount has distribution rights to the first 4 Indiana Jones films, but Paramount does not own Indiana Jones as a property. That's Lucasfilm. It's weird. So we are at the 1 hour, 40 minute mark. Adam, no, he signed Spielberg on for 3. He made Spielberg commit to 3, but there was never an indication that it was a trilogy like the Star Wars trilogy. I think you're a little confused there. Spielberg wanted to do Bond. He wasn't allowed. George said, I've got something that's like Bond, but it's going to be really cool. It's going to be better than Bond. If Indiana Jones was never meant to be a Bond-like character and it was only meant to be 3 films, why was there a Young Indiana Jones Chronicles show with all these adventures and all this stuff that happened? Anyway, whatever. You can't argue with some people.
No, and why, if that's the case, why is the second movie set before the first movie?
That.
And then,
right. Yeah.
It's a serialized adventure hero. It's you pick a location, come up with a great adventure story, and off you go.
Yeah, because the character is the character, like Batman. Anthony Gruber is ripe to play a younger Indy. Yes, he is. And they're going to waste him like they wasted Sebastian Stan playing a younger Luke Skywalker. They're not going to do it. And, thank you, Eric. Very kind, sir. Very kind. We are now at, thank you for saying that, Doctor Who show. That is the truth. That is the truth. We are at the hour and 40-minute mark. Do you have any final thoughts, Tony, on this before we wrap up the evening?
There is one thing from the trailer that I would like to ask your opinion of. So there's a scene in it where Indy uses his whip to like slide down steel cables and things like that. I would have rather have seen him, put on his adventure gloves and grab the cable and wrap his legs around it and slide down.
Yeah, a whip is not going to hold up to that kind of.
No, Indy doesn't want to treat. I don't imagine he would treat his whip that way. No. But
no,
it is a video game. It's a fun little bit of a bit of play there. But look, I hope the puzzles are challenging and interesting. It's I don't feel I really need to see another Lost Temple where you've got a cog and you've got to find the right hole to put it in. That's kind of been done to death. I hope there are a few more interesting ones. Perhaps something a little bit better than like in Dial of Destiny, where you've just got to push the rocks in the pool for water displacement.
Right.
Because that water hasn't evaporated over the last 3,000 years.
Right.
I hope there is some really good puzzles in the game and that the action is satisfactory to people, and that if it is going to be a first-person shooter, I mean, if he's in North Africa, the Brits are there. Michael, would you like to see Indy in a first-person shooter firing a Sten gun?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, even if the rest of the game sucked, that would be one of my favorite things ever.
Yes.
Like, yeah. What are some of the best things you've ever seen? Oh, well, the day of my marriage, my bride. The day of my marriage, there was this time Indy fired a Sten gun in a video game. That was pretty cool. Real quick, Adam says, fair point, although there's a bit of contention on that. Yeah, the contention on that is between Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Steven Spielberg was the one that only wanted to do his 3 movies and say he wanted to walk away. He says it in interviews. George Lucas was the one that came to him and said, hey, let's do another Indiana Jones movie now. And Spielberg said no. So if it was always planned to be a trilogy, as you posit, that means it was only planned to be a trilogy in Spielberg's mind, because he didn't want to do anymore, because Spielberg is a very pretentious, self-aggrandizing filmmaker who thinks that Indy's beneath him, and he's said it on camera. He wanted to move on and dance and be this artsy filmmaker who is deep and, pretentious and prestigious. And Indy was just what? Animal House to him or something like that. He did it to save his career from 1941 and then get a paycheck. That doesn't.
It started out that way and then it ended up just being an obligation to his friend.
Right. If it was always meant to just be a trilogy, if that was truly the plan, George Lucas would not have been the one coming to Spielberg and saying, hey, let's do the 4th one now. Spielberg's words, not mine, my friend. Anyway. And with
or
that,
Jesse Guardo says maybe Indiana Jones firing a Bren gun. The possibilities.
yeah, Indiana Jones can fly. Like, oh, that would be cool. Indiana Jones ending up like stealing like a prototype Hurricane or something to get away in 1937. Oh, be so good. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna stop fan wanking now. Why not a Thompson? Because Thompsons are played out. That's why. Thompsons are overexposed. They're overexposed. Thompsons in historical firearm, they are the Josh Gad of historical firearms. They are just in too many projects. They're always popping up. It's like, I like Thompsons, but they need to rest out for a while. It's kind of like how every DC movie has to have Batman in it. Thompson King Gun, the Batman of the World War II historical action franchise. I like Thompsons.
When I threw out my comment about the Sten gun, though, that was also me going, late 30s, North Africa. The Thompson wasn't there at that time.
Right. Yep.
So, it would be very odd. Like, the war hadn't even started. So, and then America came in late, and
Yep. I love seeing the images though from back then. Just a quick mention. I do love seeing the images back then from some of the commandos in training during the beginning of the Lend-Lease Act, where they had the full-on gangster Thompsons with the two handles and the drum magazines, but they're in their commando outfits, and they're I'm like, oh, I would probably feel pretty secure knowing I had 100 rounds and a gun that didn't kick. Like, I mean, oh my God, Oh, well. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you for all of the Hayden has one final super chat for us. He says, thank you for the super chat. A bit off topic, but what are you guys' thoughts on the recent indie animation? Oh, you mean independent animation? I don't know anything about those shows, Hayden. I'm not sure what those are. Not sure.
I have started watching, I don't know if this is indie, it's Netflix. Blue-Eyed Samurai.
Oh, okay.
On Netflix. I'm not an anime guy.
Right.
I recommend it.
Okay.
It's really, and I'm only on the second episode, but
right.
We're way off topic here.
Okay, well, I don't know anything about those, Hayden, but thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining in tonight. We all hope the indie game is great. We'll find out in April. No, later. It's later than April, isn't it? It's quite a while away.
Oh, they've just said 2020, later this year, whatever that means.
So I'm banking
on Christmas release.
Yeah,
late November Christmas release.
All right, cool. Well, everybody, have a great night. We'll see you soon.
Thank you all.